Well, thank you all for the wonderful warm welcome. It is great to be here at Ariel University. We first had plans to be with you in January of 2021. I want to apologize for running just a little bit late. But we got here. To President Yehuda Schoenfeld, the Rector Albert Ben Hassoff, everyone here at Ariel University, thank you. Thank you for this invitation and this warm welcome. And more importantly, thank you for your leadership of this truly world-class university and for everything you are doing to build a brighter future for Israel and all who call her home. Like the speaker you just heard from, I am deeply humbled to receive this recognition, an honorary doctorate, afforded to me for the privilege I have had to support the U.S.-Israel relationship over the course of my career, 20 years in public service. But I will say to each and every one of you, I cannot accept it alone. All I have done, all of my life, and all I may yet do, I owe to the grace of God, to my family, and especially to the greatest second lady the United States of America has ever had, my wife, Karen Pence. Would you join me in showing your appreciation for all she has meant to my country and yours? Ariel University is Israel's fastest growing institution of higher learning, the center of academic excellence and groundbreaking research. And it was, as you heard a few moments ago, celebrated just outside this room in October of 2020, here on the grounds of Ariel University, where the United States and Israel Science and Technology Agreement was signed, which allowed institutions in Judea and Samaria to partner with the United States on important academic, commercial, and scientific endeavors. No better place to celebrate that accomplishment than here at Ariel University. You all are a symbol of a bright future that awaits the people of Israel. I believe it with all my heart. It's amazing to think here at Ariel, more than 16,000 students, including many Arabs, lived together, learned together, thrived together, in a beautiful testament to the peaceful future that is possible here in the Holy Land. Thank you for living that out every day. And as I gather here today, I must tell you, from my very youth, Israel was always a special place in my heart. But when I came of age and I learned of the real challenges facing the people of Israel since that miraculous day in 1948. It's been my great privilege to serve my country, but to stand with yours. And I can assure you, whatever changes may happen in the currents of public life, I no longer speak on behalf of the American government, but I speak with authority when I say, now and always, America stands with Israel. But this is a wonderful night. And I must tell you, it is a special privilege for me to receive this honorary doctorate alongside someone who I grew to respect in ways that would be difficult to express. I mean, to have been in the Oval Office, to have seen in action the principled, tenacious leadership of Ambassador David Friedman. I must tell you, I truly believe that the United States of America will never have a better ambassador in the Jewish state of Israel than Ambassador David Friedman. And I thank you for your extraordinary service, the relationship between our two great nations. And I'd love to take credit for putting David in charge of getting the embassy built in record time, but I'll never forget that phone call with the President of the United States when he heard that it was going to cost a few $1 billion and 10 years before we could build the American embassy in Jerusalem. President Donald Trump said, "Get David on the phone and tell David to do it," and he did. Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. I also want to thank someone who's I consider a mentor and a friend, someone who I can tell you that Christians all across America have come to look to understand and learn from about the practical challenges facing the modern state of Israel. Christians United for Israel has had an extraordinary impact. It has touched the hearts of millions, and yet millions more to come. So would you join me in thanking Pastor John Hagee, his wonderful wife Diane, for building the bridges between Christian and Jewish Americans and the people of Israel, as no other American has done. And to distinguished officials who are here, mayors, members of the Knesset, it's my honor to be with you today. But finally, let me have one more point of privilege and express appreciation to one who is here and one who is not, but two who have loved this university and have lent not just their names and their treasure, but they have lent their passion and their vision to our university. And I can say, perhaps as no other American family was responsible for the extraordinary progress that we made in the days of the Trump-Pence administration, strengthening the bonds between our two people. We honor the memory of the late Sheldon Adelson, and we are grateful for the presence of Dr. Miriam Adelson. Thank you for all you have done for America and for Israel and for this great university. But it is great to be here at Ariel. You know, I'm told that some people say that you shouldn't go to Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. I obviously have a different opinion. In fact, I'm proud under the Trump-Pence administration that we made it clear that the communities of Judea and Samaria are not inconsistent with international law. We took a stand. And I am north today, but Karen and I had the great joy earlier today to go south. We traveled to Hebron, the oldest Jewish community in the world, and we visited the cave of the patriarchs and the matriarchs. And it was one of the greatest honors of my life. But serving as Vice President of the United States was a great privilege, and one that I will always cherish, as I will cherish having been Vice President in the most pro-Israel administration in American history. Our administration, with the strong support of Ambassador Friedman, ensured that Israel would have the resources to be able to defend herself by herself. I'm proud to report in our 4 years, American support for Israel's security was greater than ever before. And from our first day in office, we worked to strengthen the ties that bind our two nations. Under the Trump-Pence administration, we made history. We acknowledged Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. We removed the United States from the UN Human Rights Council for its blatant anti-Israel bias. We shut down the PLO office in Washington, D.C., We established a center to combat terrorism in the Middle East in conjunction with a broad range of Arab governments. We issued the strongest executive order ever to fight anti-Semitism, and we banned taxpayer dollars from any institution of higher education that traded in anti-Semitic hatred. Beyond that, we withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal and recommitted America to the pledge that Iran will never obtain a nuclear weapon. We vigorously enforced sanctions to bring Iran's oil exports to zero and deny the regime its principal source of revenue. And on the day we left office, the Iran regime was weaker than ever before. We confronted Iran's malign influence across the region. We took action as they sowed violence in Israel and across the world. And it was President Donald Trump that gave the order that brought Qasem Soleimani to justice once and for all. And of course, after years of broken promises by 4 successive American administrations, it was our president and our administration that kept our promise to the American people and the people of Israel when we moved our embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel. And every step of the way, naysayers derided our approach, didn't they, David? And they issued warnings, dire warnings, that there would be violence and mayhem if we stood strong and unapologetically with our most cherished ally, Israel. But as is usually the case with media pundits, they were wrong. And we proved just how wrong they were in the fall of 2020, when the leaders of Israel, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates signed the Abraham Accords, the first peace agreement in this region in 25 years. It was the most significant breakthrough for peace in decades. And we earnestly hope that the current American administration will work as diligently as we did to expand other countries in this region and beyond. So we made great progress for America and for Israel in concert together. But as Ambassador Friedman just alluded, how the world has changed over the last year and a half. You know, much can be said in the wake of decisions by my government to restore funding to the Palestinian Authority to approve the Nord Stream 2 pipeline between Europe and Russia, its decision to reopen the Iran nuclear deal, or the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. But it's inarguable as we gather tonight, the world is a more dangerous place for America, for Israel, and for all the freedom-loving nations of the world. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is just the latest tragic reminder of an undeniable truth of history, that weakness arouses evil, but peace comes through strength. Now, there will be plenty of time to assess the decisions my country has taken in advance of Russia's unprovoked aggression against Ukraine. But make no mistake about it, the blame for the evil unfolding across Ukraine today lies in one place and one place only. That is inside the Kremlin and on the shoulders of Vladimir Putin. Putin's attempt to redraw international lines by force is an affront to the free world and must be met with strength and resolve. America and freedom-loving nations must provide military equipment to the courageous Ukrainian soldiers fighting at this hour for their very freedom. And the free world must sanction all financial institutions, cut off all oil exports from Russia. Putin must stop, or Putin must pay. And let me say, yesterday I welcomed President Biden's announcement that the United States is banning the importation of Russian oil. And I urge all of our allies, including here in Israel, to do the same. The American president has taken a good first step for my country. But next, we call on the Biden administration to take the next important step, and that is unleash American energy and put our nation back on a path of energy independence. We must answer this crisis with American strength. But the implications are wider still than just Eastern Europe and the impact on our nations and our economies. Yesterday, your new president reminded me that in this part of the world, in his words, sign language is important. And it's important for us to remember that countries like China, North Korea, and Iran are watching the signs very carefully to determine whether the free world will stand together in this dire hour. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is an unspeakable and indefensible act of naked aggression. That's why it's incomprehensible to this American that as we speak in Vienna, the Biden administration has restarted negotiations for a new and even worse nuclear deal with Iran, and is using Russia as a mediator to secure that agreement. Make no mistake about it. The first Iran nuclear deal was an unmitigated disaster. It did not deny Iran a nuclear weapon. It virtually guaranteed that they would obtain one in 10 years. But the new deal will be even worse than the first. Despite what you may read, it is not longer and stronger. It's even reported that there's talk of sanctions relief against members of the terrorist IRGC. And there's even talk of attempts to limit the ability of future American administrations to cancel the deal. You know, buying Iranian oil directly finances Islamic terrorists that sow violence in Israel across the region and threaten the people of my country. We cannot allow the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism to gain a vast funding stream to wage a campaign of brutality and death against innocent people here and around the world. Freedom-loving nations must never capitulate to the evil and murderous regime in Tehran. We must never allow Iran the means to sow terrorist violence around the world. And we must stand strong, united with the people of Iran who deserve freedom every bit as much as all of us cherish. But let me say this. Should the current American administration sign a new nuclear deal with Tehran, I can tell you with some confidence, I believe the next American president will be a Republican. And I can say with even greater confidence, that American president will rip up any new Iran nuclear deal on day one. And even if the current administration has sent messages, ambivalent or even weak, to the world, let me say to all of our friends here in Israel, the American people remain strong. The American people understand our unique trust, the blessings our nation has been given to be the guardian of liberty, ours and yours. It's a trust I believe the American people will never forsake. And Israel is a friend we will never forsake. That's why I have long said for many, many years, I say again tonight from my heart, if the world knows nothing else, let the world know this: America stands with Israel. America stands with Israel today at a critical moment in the life of our relationship. We stand with Israel for the same reason the American people have always stood with Israel. It was even before the American founding that the dream of seeing the Jewish people return to their historic homeland, fulfilling biblical prophecy, echoed from the pulpits of little churches that dotted the eastern seaboard of what would become the United States. And every day since 1948, when America became the first nation on earth to recognize the Jewish state of Israel, we have stood with Israel because your cause is our cause. Your values are our values. Your fight is our fight. We stand with Israel because, like you, we believe in right over wrong, good over evil. And I can promise you, the American people stand with Israel because the overwhelming majority of Americans believe and have always believed that those who bless her will be blessed and those who curse her will be cursed. Don't ever doubt that the ties that bind our two people come from the heart. Meeting with your new prime minister yesterday, he was thanking me, as some of you have done tonight, for what we'd had the privilege to do for Israel over the course of our 20 years in public life. And I looked at him and I said, Mr. Prime Minister, you need to know that I'm pretty typical. And he was intrigued. He said, what do you mean by that? And I said, I'm just a small town guy from southern Indiana. Grew up just off a little country road. And I said, the passion that I feel for Israel, the love for our most cherished ally, echoes out of every little buckboard church, by every little country road and cornfield all across America from sea to shining sea. So never doubt that. And whatever it is you feel about us, whatever it is you feel about the Friedmans, just know that's what you should feel about the American people. Because America stands with Israel from a heart and a tradition of faith and commitment. So with that, I thank you for this great honor tonight. Even in these tumultuous times, it is good to be among friends, to be able to reflect on what we've been able to do together. And I'll just make you a promise. As Karen and I say, we don't know what the future holds, but we know who holds the future. And wherever the Lord leads our little family in the days ahead, I promise you that we will stand for America and we will stand with Israel. So help us God. Thank you all very much. It's a great honor to be with you today. God bless Israel and God bless the United States of America.
you.